It is time to go beside two reporters as we bring in Ryan Rishaug and Farhan Lalji. And first of all, you, Farhan, before we get into how this will affect the Canucks in Game 4, I know you initially planned to do a reenactment of the Soucy cross-check, but it almost led to complete disaster. Is that right?
Well, you know, Jay, earlier in the day, I actually tried to cross-check Ryan Rishaug with the microphone, and what happened was our cameraman Dave Parker went behind him and cross-checked him from the back. Yeah. Rish went down.
Both hurt.
But I actually went right over Rish's head. But as far as how this is going to affect the Canucks, this is a tough one. Carson Soucy's been a really important player for this team. You saw both he and Tyler Myers get a lot of matchup minutes against the McDavid Draisaitl line, so they're not going to have that option available to them. Noah Juleson will come into the lineup. He's a big physical guy. He's got no problem with that style of game, but he did play one game earlier in the Nashville series when Tyler Myers was sick, and he kind of struggled a little bit. That said, during the regular season, I think Juleson made a lot of fans. Many people felt he was one of the Canucks' best six defensemen and probably should have been in the opening night roster as far as the playoffs were concerned. So we'll see, having that one game under his belt, whether or not he can live up to this. But the physicality in that part of the game isn't going to affect Juleson. But Soucy is a big loss for Vancouver.
And important to note, Jay, that Farhan is not available for Game 4 of this series. He had a hearing with Donna Rishaug, my mother, and she has sidelined him for game number 4.
I got scolded on Mother's Day.
It makes perfect sense. Donna Rishaug, very much a disciplinarian. Goaltending, it's an issue for the Oilers, Ryan. As you know, Stu Skinner pulled in Game 3. Calvin Pickard comes in, stops all the shots he faces in the third. So my question is, who do you think the Oilers should start in Game 4, and who do you think they will start?
Two very good questions, Jay. I'm going to say I think they will start Calvin Pickard, and I'm going to say I think they should start Calvin Pickard. And those are not easy decisions. There's going to be a lot of discussion here. Chris Knoblauch wouldn't say today which way that they were going to go. I mean, Stuart Skinner is the franchise's #1 netminder, right? That is his. And he was all season long. But you can't ignore what's happening out on the ice. The thing about Calvin Pickard, well, he doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. He was really good this season. He's one of the better stories around the National Hockey League this year of guys making great comebacks in their career. He was so good. He was so reliable. And I think the Oilers need to pay attention to that. Remember last year when Skinner's game went the wrong way in the second round? He had a hard time getting it back, and the Oilers kept going to him over and over again. I think they need to pay attention to what's in front of them here. And I think Skinner will get back in the net at some point, and I think he's got a good chance to bounce back. But in the here and now, I think that they need to give Calvin Pickard this next start. Farhan, one of the other changes we could see is Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl being split up, because they can't keep playing all these minutes on the same line.
They'll never split us up.
No, never.
Not during this series.
How do you think that affects the Canucks, though, if they do that?
Well, I think the Canucks will be comfortable in that world, because if you wind up splitting them up, the Vancouver Canucks have seen two different lines, two different centers get matchup minutes against the McDavid line. So you could see Elias Lindholm or JT Miller, either one of those lines. So if one winds up against McDavid, one winds up against Draisaitl, I think the Canucks would be really comfortable. But it's going to really put a premium on Elias Pettersson, who really by usage is essentially the Canucks' third line center right now. And they should win that matchup. Regardless of who his wingers are, they should win that matchup against Edmonton's third line. Other than one power play goal, Pettersson's been fairly quiet. He's going to need to step up if Edmonton splits up those two lines.
Let's talk about the physicality in this series, guys. Slashes, cross-checks to the face. Rick Tocchet, he demands a physical style of play. That's been evident in this series. The Canucks have actually out-hit the Oilers almost 2-1 in Game 3. Ryan, can the Oilers match that style of play in a must-win in Game 4?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, Jay. I have asked Chris Knoblauch a couple of times in these playoffs about his team's overall level of physicality, asking if he feels like it needs to come up. Because, I mean, let's face it, they have players that play a lot of minutes on this team that finish many games with 0 hits. And it's not just about the hit total. I think it's about setting the tone as a team. But Knoblauch's response to that is often it's understated, the importance of it. He doesn't necessarily portray that he feels it's something that has to be done. And so if that's the message that the players are getting as well, I'm not surprised that they're playing the way they are. I don't necessarily agree. I think the formula in the playoffs is that whether you are a hitter or not, I think there's an expectation level to go on the ice and to set a tone, to take care of everything you can take care of. And finishing checks is one of the easiest things to do. And I think more players need to make it part of their responsibility. I think more players need to be willing to go out there and do it. But it doesn't seem to be a focus, at least for what the head coach is saying to us. I'm not sure if the team feels it that way or not. But Farhan, I think it's been advantage Vancouver on that front. We saw it early in Game 3, and I think those details matter.
Yeah, and I think the Canucks at the end of game 2 looked like they were playing scared, not necessarily of physicality, but, scared of what Edmonton's top forwards were able to do to them. So I think they wanted to set the tone in the first game here on the road by being that physical team. You saw it in the first shift, both Elias Lindholm and Dakota Joshua with big hits on Ekholm, and Vancouver finished with 50 hits in that game. Now, look, I know that Edmonton had the puck a lot, and generally when that happens, you're not making many hits, you're taking a few more hits, but when you look at how Vancouver has built their blue line, they're comfortable playing in that world. You look at Tyler Myers with 7 hits last night, and a number of their defense were really, really involved physically in that game. So I do think Vancouver is very, very comfortable playing that way. And in Edmonton's case, you've got some of these bottom 6 forwards that they want to contribute if they can do it physically, but I think they also want to mind that line because Vancouver's power play is slowly creeping to life, and that's one thing that Vancouver didn't want to get into on their side. They didn't want to be overly aggressive and take penalties with that Edmonton power play. Maybe Edmonton's feeling the same way a little bit right now.
Ryan Rishaug, Farhan Lalji, thanks for this. We will chat after Game 4 Tuesday night. This has been